Hey everybody, welcome to our webinar on personalizing the candidate experience. We are actually going to give people just a couple more minutes to trickle in, so just bear with us here for the next minute or two. All right, awesome. Well, why don't we get started here? It's 2 past the hour. Again, thanks everyone for joining us today. My name is Joe Motter, and I am the Director of Marketing here at Brazen. And I'm going to be playing kind of a dual role today, both MC, make sure that this webinar is moving along, but also jump in as a speaker at times. So I want to thank everyone for being here. You know, we're really excited to share with you different strategies and tactics for personalizing the candidate experience. And I think the really cool thing about today's webinar is it's not just going to be some webinar on theories and we're going to throw a whole bunch of stats at you, although there are some good metrics and stats that we have for you. But the cool part is we're actually going to have some real life examples of this stuff in action. And really the star of the show, who's going to really help lead us through some of these real life examples is Shelly Fisher from Vanguard, and she'll be introducing herself here in just a second. But she's got some really great case studies about the things that Vanguard is doing in regards to recruitment marketing and on this topic of personalizing the candidate experience. We also have Kevin Grossman from the Talent Board, who's going to be providing some data and perspective for us on the state of candidate experience. So really excited for that. And then in between all of that, you'll be getting and hearing some additional color commentary from both Symphony Talent and Brazen, who are the two sponsors of this webinar. Before we jump in, though, I did want to do just a couple housekeeping items. So we do encourage you to ask questions throughout this webinar. You can just chat them right into the chat window there on the side. So go to webinar. I'm thinking the webinar is going to run about 45 minutes, so we should have plenty of time to get to your questions at the end. And if we don't get to a question you have, we'll have someone from one of our respective teams follow up with you directly after the webinar. One last thing is we will be recording the webinar, so if you have to leave early for whatever reason, we obviously hope you can stay the whole time, but we will be sending that out after. So with that, let's jump right in. So I've already introduced myself, so I'll throw it over to Shelly.
Thanks, Joe, and thanks for the great introduction. I wouldn't call myself the star of the show. I would call my team that's working on the back end really the stars, and I'm just fortunate enough to share some of the great work that we're doing here. But my name is Shelly Fisher, and I am a recruitment marketing manager at Vanguard. I have worked at Vanguard for 7.5 years now and lead a team that is responsible today for increasing awareness of Vanguard as an employer of choice through digital-first, candidate-centric experiences, which again will be a core topic that we discussed today, which is helping us unlock broader talent pools that truly support the future of the talent direction here at Vanguard. Really excited to be here. And I'll pass it over to Kevin.
Hey, Shelly, thank you so much. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today. And my name is Kevin Grossman. I'm President of Global Programs at Talent Board, which is a nonprofit research organization all about promoting and elevating a quality candidate experience at organizations around the world. And we do survey research every year with employers in North America, EMEA, as well as APAC, around best practices in recruitment and candidate experience. And I'm excited to be here.
And my name is Denise Giroux. I too am excited to be here. I'm a Vice President of Strategy and Client Services at Symphony Talent, and I work with clients across various industries to help them redefine how they connect and engage with talent using data-driven consumer marketing, best practices, and agile technology solutions. Great to be here.
Great. Can everyone see the slides now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry about that. All right, so thanks everyone, and let's jump in.
All right, so I'm here today, folks, to give you kind of a big picture macro setup. This is a perennial issue that we talk about every year in HR and recruiting, and that the fact is there's the black hole, a lot of negative experiences for candidates today. And today more than ever, we're in a really tight job market. And so they're definitely in the driver's seat. And one of the things that we see year after year in our research is that those who have an overall really negative experience going through any of your hiring practices and recruiting practices out there that are listening on the webinar today, they tell us through our survey research that they're going to take their relationships elsewhere, meaning they won't apply again, they won't refer others, and they won't buy stuff if and when applicable for those that are consumer-based businesses. And so what's clear, what we see, one of the trends, and we're going to talk a lot about this today, especially on the front end around pre-application and application and just north of that, is that it's a customer service issue really at the end of the day, and it's going to impact whether or not candidates are willing to refer and others to your organization. And again, as I mentioned, whether they want to buy stuff, whether or not you're a consumer-based business. And, we've been taking this angle on the front end with social media marketing, for example, and a lot of customer service space when it comes to selling our products and services. And we're finally seeing more companies today, and we've got a great example from Vanguard on today, and Shelly's going to share that what her and her team are doing as it relates to really serving their primary customer of recruiting, which is the candidate, how they do that. And at the end of the day, this is not about making every single candidate happy, because that's completely unrealistic, and I would be the first to tell you all that. This is all about perceived fairness in the process, so that everybody understands where they're at, especially post-application, and when there's closure given to each candidate at that point of, we're going to pass on you, but thank you for your time today, and actually bringing that definitive closure. A quick example of the potential impact on your business is actually a case study from a couple of years ago from Virgin Media. And Virgin Media basically found that they were losing about $6 million in annual sales revenue due to poor candidate experience. And they ended up identifying what they needed to improve and turned it around into a $7 million revenue stream. We see this again and again with a lot of publicly traded companies, consumer-based industry companies that are in our survey research every year, that are also know that the cost can be millions in their business bottom line. And referrals are a little harder to track, but at the same time, if you don't have the referrals that you count on every year at your organization, that will impact eventually the bottom line, because you didn't have those hires that you needed in the first place to grow and sustain your business. Just harder to connect those dots, but that reality is there. So what we're going to talk about today is really about where do we start, and that's all about personalizing the candidate experience. And we've got some great examples that we're going to start sharing with you now.
Great. So actually, I always say Amazon really spoiled us, right? So if you think about the digital buying experience, when you're a consumer, it's now easy, it's personalized, and it gets smarter with each interaction. I mean, half the time, if you're like me, the next time you come back to a site, you're greeted by your name, and you're shown up, you're delivered products that you either, looked at, you bought, or products that are similar to what you bought in the past. So when you think about it, as a consumer, you're used to seeing that experience. You get that same experience. So why can't candidates who are doing their own purchasing at a very important consumer purchase, looking for a new job, shouldn't they be expected to get the same experience? So Joe, you can go to the next slide. So when we start talking about customized, easy experience, we now through AI and through machine learning, we can optimize and personalize the candidate experience, the consumer candidate experience, from the moment they see your message to the moment of apply and actually beyond. So if you think about that, after all this, it's one of the most important purchases. So over the last couple of years, we've partnered with Vanguard to ensure that their website content is relevant, authentic, and personal to the targeted audience. And it's working to get smarter in terms of performance and results with each visit and return visit. So here to tell us a little bit more about that is Shelly.
Thank you. Thanks, Kevin and Denise. I think you guys both did a fantastic job of really teeing up kind of the macro themes of what we're here to talk about today. And as both of you mentioned, candidates really are in the driver's seat, and we're experiencing that at Vanguard. And quick facts for those that might not be as familiar with Vanguard. We started as a very small financial firm in 1975, and we have now transformed into one of the largest investment companies in the world today. And we've seen record growth, and with that growth comes some challenges. And I think, as both Kevin and Denise mentioned, with the consumerization of the candidate experience, both our candidates and clients are connecting with us just like they are their favorite brands. And throughout their experience, they're expected to be served up that relevant, personalized content that Denise and Kevin were speaking to, in the channels that they live in. So for our approach here at Vanguard, we're seeing a shift in the expectation when it comes to our candidates and our clients. And I think a important thing to push is because of technology, where the recruiting landscape is constantly changing, and technology and big data are shaping the way we're doing business, which is also shifting our talent needs as an organization. So it no longer cuts it just to be experts in the financial services industry. You also have to be tech experts and understand big data, and how do you push out the right information to those candidates. I recently saw a stat from LinkedIn that the 10 most in-demand hard skills for 2018 include roles in cloud computing, data mining, and analysts, web architecture, UI designers, and SEO marketing. So I think that we're also seeing a shift in our talent needs and attracting this niche specialized talent group. So how are we doing that? We use multiple channels. So we have an omnichannel strategy. And you can see that on the slide here listed today. We could spend hours talking about this, so I could cover each and every one of these and how we're thinking about the types of content that we're pushing out in these channels. But you can see the majority of them are digital, because that is where the candidates and clients are living today. But today I really want to dive in and focus on, one, how are we thinking about connecting with candidates? So what are the questions you want to ask yourself when it comes to some of your managed and owned channels? We at Vanguard think about three things, and that's being more accessible, being more connected, and being more authentic. And I think all of the enhancements that we talk about today really roll up into these. And when I think about being more accessible, ask yourself the question, can candidates find your opportunities easily? When they go to Google, are you showing up on page 1 of the search, right? Is your career site mobily optimized? Because we know that more people today own a phone than they do a toothbrush. And is that content, when they're searching, relevant to them? Are we accessible? Are they finding your brand? The connected piece is really are we meeting the candidates where they are? And I think that varies depending on the level of talent that we're hiring for. So our college and campus strategy, which is an enhancement I'll focus on first today, looks different than an executive hire. So are we meeting them in the channels where they spend the most time? That's connected. And then authentic is, are we currently showing a true representation of our culture? So I know we've all been in the days of stock photography on our website. And we as a team are really trying to amplify the message from crew members themselves. And I think that one of the core ideas we want to talk about today is some of the enhancements on the career site. So I think before I dive into what does that look like in real life, I'm going to punt it back over to Kevin to show a few trends that he's seeing when it comes to career site and candidate search.
Thank you so much, Shelly. So here's the deal. One of the things that we find year after year as another differentiator in our research data, again, this is hundreds of employers and tens and thousands of candidates that we survey every year on their experience. And most companies, most of you out there that are on this webinar today, you're investing more at the later stages of the process. And what I mean by that is communication, feedback, transparency, for the most part on the average, when it comes to the later screening, interview, offer, and onboard stage. Makes sense. We give away awards every year to companies that have the highest positive candidate ratings, and even they still have the edge in that regard when it comes to the data itself. But what's becoming more and more of a bigger differentiator is investing in the front end, what we're talking about right now in the attraction phase. And one of the things that we find year after year, and this should be no surprise to anybody, most candidates are doing their own research for the job search, right? Maybe they're going to Google first once they identify some companies that they're interested in, that if they didn't already have them on their radar, then they go to the career sites, and that's really the first place they're going to go based on our research. But 3/4 of candidates are doing their own job search. It's a much smaller percentage that are being sought out and sourced, the harder to find folks, tech folks, executive management positions, et cetera. Values is still year after year one of the top kinds of marketing content that candidates prefer to read more about almost 50%. And that could be everything from your core values and blogs about what it's like to work there, and videos from employees and hiring managers. In fact, testimonials and referrals are huge. They're bigger for candidates now than they've ever been per our data. And the information's out there. When we're going to Glassdoor, we're going to Kununu, we're going to Indeed, we're reading the reviews about companies that for the most part are anonymous. And we're leaning on that information. We want to know what it's not just and what it's like to work there, and why do you stay there? Those are big questions that candidates ask, and I think are really important.
Thanks, Kevin. I think that ties in really nicely to some of the real life examples that I'm here to share today. With one last stat or thing I want to highlight is today employees are the most trusted internal spokesperson and can truly be conduits to attract talent. What Kevin was saying is that they want to see the values. They want to see why crew are staying, why are they working here, and what stories do they have to offer? Who am I going to work with? So our team has really been focused on bringing employee stories to life. And the first example I want to showcase is our Microsites. So 2 years ago, and in the past, we've always used a campus strategy because a large amount of our pipeline we attract from the college strategy. So at career fairs, right, on campus and universities, attracting that entry-level talent into the organization. And in the past, we've used a paper strategy. We've provided them, hey, here's where our website is, here's a postcard that shows all of the opportunities. Well, that's not cutting it anymore. Candidates, right, we know they're on their mobile device, and they expect that personalized, snackable content that's relevant to them and their skill set. So this past fall, with our career site, we decided, hey, let's build out some custom landing pages specific to our campus strategy, and we call them Microsites. And for anyone on the call today, I recommend that you actually text VG Tech VG space tech to 313131. You'll be served up a text code that drives you back to our tech experience. So rather than everyone receiving the same content, we actually have different microsites for some of the core skills and roles that we hire for on campus. So our university specialists can talk to a candidate, and when they get to know them a little bit more, say, hey, you look like you have a great skill set to fill this role. And they're actually served up relevant content that are specific to that job that they're qualified for, because we know, and research has shown for our team in the past, that if you give them a postcard, they're going to look at the most exciting role out there, whether or not they're qualified for it or not. And what this does is it really helps our, I would say it funnels our pipeline and filters our pipeline so that we're seeing more qualified candidates. They're getting the information that they need. They're set up for more success. So as you scroll through this microsite, we're not only telling them what roles, but we're giving them advice on how to land that next job, how best practices on how to network with people at Vanguard. So they're getting information that is beneficial to them, whether or not they choose to come to Vanguard, that's helping them succeed in their career aspirations. So that's the microsite feature, and we're really excited about it. And towards the end, if you guys have any questions on it, I'm happy to answer those. The other piece that I'd like to share is on our career lattice. So our career lattice is also featured on our career site, and it's on key areas of our career pages. So typically our marketing strategy is, if we're trying to feature a specific role, we're driving traffic back to these pages to show the open opportunities that exist on this role. And rather than serving up the same content when you land on our career site, we actually post crew that live and know this role better than we do. They're showcasing, hey, what's the day in the life look like in this position? And here's some advice I have for you. Here's how Kevin mentioned they want to hear about values. Here's how my role and my responsibilities are connecting back to my organization's mission, and really the impact and the difference that you're going to make today. Because we know the majority of millennials that we're hiring for, they would rather take a cut in salary and work for a company that has the same missions and values rather than getting a bigger paycheck. So this is really connecting the right candidates to the right roles by showing these stories, and these crew do a great job of sharing what that day in the life looks like, sharing the mission, sharing the values, and some advice to those that are interested in this role. They actually provide them some advice on, hey, here's the type of skills we're looking for. So it filters out those that aren't the best fit. So that's the lattice. And again, take a look, go to vanguardjobs.com and check those out in our key job areas. Very engaging. The candidates we've seen year over year increased time on those pages. So we're actually seeing them engaging with these pages more than they ever have been in the past, which is great. They're not bouncing off of our site, but they're spending time digesting the information. So a lot of great metrics and statistics that have come out of this. And then the last feature, which I may be the most excited about, is our careers blog. So we launched our careers blog in the summer this past year, and the blog is, again, another personalized experience where we cover. We started it off with our interns. So our interns are who we piloted it with over the summer internship, and we said, hey, let's challenge them. Who can explain the internship and share it with their friends better than the interns? So let's challenge them to write short form blogs for us. And we elevated the blog site. It's search engine optimized. So it's showing up on the first page of search, which is fantastic. And the interns had an absolute blast and talk about advocates of our brand. Not only is it great for talent attraction, they're sharing their stories, and then they're sharing it with all of their friends who might not have thought of Vanguard as a career. So we started piloting it with the interns, and then we've really scaled this over the past year to cover topics from Vanguard giving back, so our efforts in the community and how we're really making an impact in our community through philanthropic efforts, all the way to diversity and inclusion and what that means at Vanguard. So you can go check that out on our career site. But basically, the blogs we post twice a week. we get crew from all over the organization that are featured on these blog pages. And what's great is we now have this repository of content that in the past we really didn't have. We didn't know where this would sit on the site. When we feature these stories on LinkedIn, which we do have a corporate page, we didn't really have anywhere to drive it back to. Now we have this content that we can go back to throughout the year, this great snackable content that we can really grow legs in multiple social channels, and true real stories of crew. Sorry, I keep saying crew and employees. We call our employees crew members, but that our employees now play a part in being advocates of our brand. They're sharing it on LinkedIn. They're putting it on their LinkedIn profiles. And they're truly making an impact in sharing our talent brand to the world. So the careers blog is something that we've been really, really excited about. And it's just a really great way to recognize crew at our company as well that helps with retention efforts. So those are the three core enhancements that we've been able to partner with the Symphony team on in developing this year. And continue to see success in this content and really great feedback from candidates that they have this to do research on.
So what does that all mean? If you think about it, I mean, both Kevin and Shelly have talked about how content and content out for the candidate is always on, and how candidates are always doing their own research. So candidates are going to share their experiences when it comes to the process, regardless of whether they're good or bad, as you can see here. And in today's connected world, opinions travel faster and are shared quickly, primarily through online reviews. We talk about Glassdoor, we talk about LinkedIn, we talk about Indeed, we talk about those forums and those blogs. So in this context, companies are really wise to manage the candidate engagement experience as the crux of their employment brand. So you can't control everything, but if you manage it properly and consistently, you can create a great process, not only as an employer, but really as a great company. So if you go on to the next slide, Joe, we really look at it in three ways. If you think about it, candidates know your company before you know them, but it needs to be a two-way street where the benefit is really mutual. And as an organization, you have the ability to really change the candidate experience and change it dramatically. So if you think of the candidate life cycle, the touch points really fall into three areas, starting at the top of the funnel and then down to the bottom. So at the top of the funnel, you have recruitment marketing, where you target candidates with meaningful, personalized messaging. And we know that when we talk about personalized messaging, personalized content, things like location and occupation and behavior and how those things interact with content on a website or content out in the internet, it can increase your click to apply by more than 20%. Once you get them into the funnel, you talk about how do you continue to engage and nurture them until they become an employee, and then how do you seal the deal? You can do that through candidate management. Finally, once they join your organization, how do you harness their network? And Shelly talked quite a bit about advocates. So in short, these candidates who have the most positive experience can easily become your strongest advocates. If you go on to the next slide, we talk a little bit about omnichannel and candidate journey. So if you think about it, again, what does it mean? It means there's lots of tools and lots of resources available to transform your processes and optimize the candidate journey. So from optimizing sourcing efforts and developing and identifying targeted messaging and media, maximizing what we're doing from a lead capture perspective, or even introducing tools to minimize candidate drop-off and abandonment. It's important that you meet candidates where they are and make it easier for them to connect with you. Put them first, and there's lots of things vying for their attention, and make it personal, and you'll go a long way. Shelly, I think we're back to you, right?
Yes, great. Thanks, Denise. All great points, and I think the last enhancement that we'd like to discuss today in terms of how we're personalizing the candidate experience and this concept of always being on and candidate engagement is our live chat feature with Raven. So currently we feature 4 roles, and we promote it that our recruiters actually staff these every week. So we are giving candidates the opportunity that, hey, if I have a question and I looked at the job description and I'm not quite sure if I want to apply, we serve up the opportunity to chat live with a recruiter on a regular basis. So candidates get one-on-one time each week that recruiters take time out of their day to answer these questions, and they make them feel more comfortable about making that decision to apply and start here at Vanguard. It is a really great way to personalize the experience. We can leverage these chats. We put them on our career site. We put them in our job descriptions. We've given, Brazen's helped us with creating marketing documents for our recruiters to really run with it, so they can feature these chats on social, on LinkedIn, in their email signatures when they're reaching out to candidates. So again, the promotion piece and this always on, we're always giving them the opportunity to be able to connect one-on-one in real time with someone here at Vanguard. And it's that personal touch that's really making a difference. When we've pulled feedback from candidates, we've seen, so in the past, we've worked with Brazen and we've done one-off events. So we take a lot of marketing effort to push out one event in certain seasons throughout the year. This always on strategy has really allowed us to, I think, triple the amount of chats that we're receiving, and it's increased our ratings of the events. I think out of a scale of 5, candidates are saying that they strongly value the time. And I'll give you some direct feedback, which recently we received, I think last week, is a candidate reached out saying that it was quick, it was efficient. They didn't know that their brief interaction would lead to an interview, so we actually are increasing our speed to interview, where in the past, rather than going through the process of applying and then your resume is kind of out there in limbo, this is a really great way to stay connected with the candidate. They get an interview faster, and they're more excited about that opportunity to work here. Some other feedback we've seen is, I love that I was able to ask questions about the program, as well as provide the recruiters with more information that isn't readily available on my resume. So we're giving them the opportunity to really showcase some of the skills that might not be as apparent on that paper. Questions were answered, and I gained more information about the role. It was simple, direct way to connect. So again, it's this building that emotional connection with a candidate that has truly helped us increase our quality of hire, because candidates know exactly what they're getting into when they sign up to apply at Vanguard. So that is the last enhancement that I'm excited to feature today. And I think that I'll kick it over to Joe to reiterate some of why chat's so important in this space.
Yeah, thanks, Shelly. That was great. I mean, I think that really this second to last, third to last slide, I think really kind of ties everything together that we've been talking about. So all the stuff that you're doing on your career site with employee stories and testimonials, I think is again ties back to that stat you had from Edelman, or one of those research firms, saying that candidates trust employees as the most trusted spokesperson at your organization. And so I think when you look at this from an entire kind of funnel perspective, you have these different layers. So the videos or the employee stories or the blogs allow candidates to start to understand your brand. And then the next layer is it's actually bringing in those actual people, those recruiters or hiring managers or employees into these actual one-on-one chats, these online conversations, which again further creates that humanization of your brand. Anytime we talk about personalization, we're talking about the person, and these chats are one-to-one with actual people. And so I think it's what it starts to do, in addition to increasing that time to interview or increasing time to hire that we're seeing with our clients, it starts to differentiate your brand. And this is all the way back to what Kevin talked about. I mean, this is very candidate-driven industry, and so anything you can do to differentiate your brand, to to attract that top talent is huge, because you don't want people coming to your site and leaving to go to your competition. And so I think that really all of this together, there's a ton of synergy, and you know, at the end of the day, it's helping to not only humanize your brand, but attract the top talent and move them quickly through that funnel. One last point that I'll make about chat specifically, in why I believe it's been so effective for Vanguard, and for, you know, hundreds of other of our clients here at Brazen, is if you just kind of think about the paradigm shift that we've seen over the last 3 or 5 years in regards to communication in general. You know, more and more we're on our phones, and we're using tools, chat software like Facebook Messenger or Slack or WhatsApp. You know, I think it doesn't come to anybody as a surprise that there's billions of people that are using this type of chat software. So as recruiters or talent acquisition professionals, it only makes sense that if you want to engage with candidates or communicate with candidates, you should probably be using the mode of communication that they're using in their everyday lives. And so, you know, that's really, I think, one of the big reasons why, you know, Brazen introduced chat to this space. So I think that's really, really important to understand as well.
That's a great point, Joe. And I think that, like you said, these are the channels where they're most comfortable in. And I think so today, these are great enhancements that we're showcasing, but we can't get comfortable because we know how quickly the recruiting landscape can change. And I think when we think about where we want to end on is, what are some of the trends that we're seeing in 2019, or what can we expect in the future when it comes to candidate experience? And I know from a macro perspective, Kevin has some insights he'd like to share.
So yeah, we'll go back and forth on this, Shelly. I do want to underscore something that's been top of mind for me more recently than ever. I guess that's what top of mind means. Anyway, so my point is that I hear this a lot from both even the solution provider side as well as even the employer side, where, oh, you know, we've got to have a new angle, and we got to have some fresh thought leadership, take a new angle at things. And my whole take on this, and when it comes to candidate experiences, it's just the fundamentals over and over again. You may have improved some things. You took on some initiatives internally with your team, with your processes, with your technologies that are working, and that's great. It's in the sustaining that's the heavy lifting. It's going to take a lot more work. And just keep in mind that some of these basic building blocks of, again, taking a customer-centric approach that we've been talking about, if it's working, you should be doubling down on it and investing even more. And that includes the live chats and the chat bots for answering general questions around jobs and employment, using social media channels in a variety of capacities like we were outlining during this call. And act and think like marketers as well. We've been, you know, that's one that I know I've beaten like a dead horse, which is a really horrible image, by the way, but I thought I'd share it anyway. Sorry about that. So you've got think and act like a marketer, right? Of being able to market on a regular basis. I mean, I can tell you that for most of the candy winning companies that participate in our research and win our awards, about 3/4 of them have a CRM and are planning to invest in one, or some kind of a platform, like we've been talking about today, to have those community chats and those discussions, and that's really, really critical. And as a differentiator, even before anybody applies for a job, right, Shelly?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the whole concept of act like a marketer, I think it's been quite a shift, I think, for our recruiting team. More and more, we're trying to give them these tools. So Brazen live chat is an example of that. This is before they even applied, right? There's 18 different sources that candidates are using to research. So by providing our talent acquisition team with, here are all the ways that you can be amplifying that message, it works wonders when it comes to just amplifying the brand, because their network is more valuable than mine. So this is a great way of skilling them up on, here are all the resources that you have. Our advocacy program, we have an advocacy program manager here at Vanguard, She's now sending out weekly emails to say, here are all the ways that we are messaging to candidates, and they're all shareable. They're all shareable on all of these social media channels, and it takes one click for you to help tell that story. So absolutely, I think that's very relevant. Very relevant, Kevin.
Absolutely. And then acknowledging skills and experience. And again, the things that I'm talking about, folks, are takeaways from our research. Again, macro perspective, employers around the world. Primarily, this is North American data, but these same trends are all over the place. I mean, the universal here is the candidate experience is pretty universal throughout the world. And acknowledging their skills and experience. I mean, we as candidates, put yourself in their shoes again, right? Imagine that you just want to try to show yourself into the best light possible. And this is my skill. These are my skills. This is my experience. And I'm not just, just filling out a job application and moving on. So somehow being able to acknowledge that with the processes and the technologies you have in place, even with an automated message, and if you have the ability to scale with the human touch to actually reach out, especially for those that maybe eventually could be future fit and silver medalists, even though that's later down in the process. But those candidates who feel that satisfied with their ability to showcase themselves have an overall higher candidate satisfaction. They feel like the process was more fair. And one of the things that we also recommend at Talent Board is that, after you're asking all these different questions, even on the application side, if you ever ask the open-ended question, is there anything else you'd like to tell us that we didn't ask you? That one question can go miles, right, Shelly?
Yeah, absolutely, Kevin. And I think this one's very relatable. I think we touched on this a little bit earlier in the webinar when we think about, Denise mentioned AI. So one, it's from the very beginning when they're getting to know Vanguard, are we serving them up relevant content specific to their role? And then once they apply, things we're thinking about here at Vanguard is there's now new interviewing tools available, virtual job tryouts, hackathons and coding challenges that we're thinking about doing leading up to the interview to really challenge the candidates. They enjoyed the challenge. And what we've seen has been most successful is when you gamify things, because candidates are excited about that. They want to show off their specialized skills. So how do we make that whole candidate journey more relevant to them?
Absolutely. The last point, and again, this is kind of echoing how we started at the beginning of the webinar, but everything that you do in recruitment, every single touch point, whether that's by a human, by technology, by whatever processes you have in place, every single thing impacts, for good or ill will, the impact on your business as well as the candidate experience, and those two are interchangeable. So just as a reminder, again, we see it in our data every year. I talked about the negative early on and the positive, but 65% of candidates around the world and throughout all of our research around the world tell us that when they feel that they've been treated fairly and have an overall pretty great candidate experience, and most of the candidates in our research do not get the job. That mirrors real life, right? 99 out of 100 people don't get hired at the end of the day. But if they feel that way, they tell us that they're still more than likely to increase the relationship with the business, and that means I'll apply again. That means I'll refer others, and I'll buy stuff. Right,
yeah,
Shelly?
no, I think that's a fantastic point, Kevin. And I think that we see this every day at Vanguard. I think that kind of my motto is every candidate or client, right? Anybody out there, whether they're passively looking for a job, actively looking for a job, could be a future employee or client now or in the future. So I think we have to act like that in how we think about that journey, and make sure that whether or not they are the right fit for a job, they felt like they got a really personalized, good experience. So that's a great note, I think, to end on.
Absolutely. Yes.
So awesome. Thank you, everybody. I do want to point out that I did play two roles in today's webinar, one as a speaker, but the other as the MC, and I promised that we would take about 45 minutes. We just took 43. So Spot on. So good job, everybody. We do have time then for a couple questions. So if you have some extra time, we're going to run through about 5 or 6 questions that have come in. I think the first one, Shelly, was directed at you. You talked about the omnichannel experience. There is a lot there. How are you prioritizing?
That is a great question. And I think we as a marketing team prioritize our marketing efforts based on our hiring needs. So we work very closely with our talent acquisition counterparts and our recruiting managers to better understand the forecast of those roles that we're hiring. And then how I mentioned a little bit earlier in the webinar is we know that an executive hire, right, is not tweeting to find out about a job. We know that an executive hire isn't using channels that a millennial would particularly use. And we have data that supports that. So as candidates are coming through the pipeline, we can see of those roles that we are hiring for, we know that X number of candidates are leveraging LinkedIn or Facebook or Instagram, right? So we know the channels that they're coming in, and then we can then prioritize to fit that need and make sure that we are pushing those targeted messages in the appropriate channel. Hopefully that helps.
Awesome. So this next question, there's kind of 2 questions that are similar to each other. So I'll read them both. Again, I think this is for you, Shelly. So it said you gave some feedback from candidates. I assume that this is in regards to the live chat. But how have Vanguard recruiters responded to the live chat? And then the other question was it difficult to get adoption of brazen chats internally? So I guess kind of from the perspective of the recruiters and hiring managers.
Yeah, so we work really closely with the recruiters. I'm fortunate enough to sit very close to the recruiters. And I think from an adoption perspective, my advice would be, and I think we had a great relationship with Brazen on this, but providing them all the tools to make it successful and make it as a seamless and an integrated process into their day-to-day. So we're really asking them an hour a week, and then we distribute that amongst the recruiters. So each recruiter is responsible for 1 hour out of their week. We block their schedules. We pretty much provide them all the resources in order for them to be successful. And we've actually seen really great adoption. And I think the recruiters, what's great about these chats is they can also do things outside of the chat, right? Because we have people chatting on their mobile device, but they actually are able to multitask and kind of push candidates through the funnel while they're talking to some of these candidates. So it's actually created some great efficiencies in the process. They're acting more like marketers because we taught them how to share the chats on their own LinkedIn feeds. And initially when we launched these, we actually gamified it. So, and I'm happy to, whoever asked the question, if you want to connect with me on LinkedIn, but 2 years ago, we launched a learning platform or a learning series with all of our recruiters, and we gamified it. So it was a challenge amongst the recruiters to see who was sharing it the most, who was getting the most traffic onto their chat. And they were awarded prizes for those that was doing it the best, and then they would share those best practices out to the majority. So I have all sorts of best practices and tips in terms of how to increase that adoption, but it's really just teeing them up and making sure that they have all the resources they need to be able to manage it.
That's so awesome. It's almost like a pseudo like commission structure, like you'd find like a sales team.
Yes.
Cool. Awesome. So just a couple more here. So I like this one. So how do you differentiate the candidate experience versus the applicant experience? I guess this kind of relates back, to what you said, Shelly, about it doesn't start with apply now. But how are you kind of differentiating those two?
I think that's a great question. I think I will say my team is really focused on attracting talent all the way leading up to when they hit apply. And then I think once they hit apply, we're having conversations with the recruiters that I would say our recruiting and our onboarding team are really responsible for. How do we keep them warm? How do we continue to message them through the application process? And I know with our ATS, we're actually looking at ways to make sure that we are always on in this space. And I think we have a little bit more of a ways to go when it comes to this channel, but making sure that we are touching base with them, we're connecting with them as they're waiting for that interview or that offer, that candidates have or that recruiters have the resources to reach out to those candidates after application. And I do think that on our career site, after they apply, they have the option to join our talent community. So you can go to our career site today, you can see that they have the opportunity, once they hit apply, you can join our talent community, and then we actually serve them up emails periodically about other open positions. We've incorporated a link to our blog. So that's another way to continue to make them feel like they're getting that personal connection after that application.
Awesome. I think we have one more here. Someone has actually texted me the questions because I can't see them right now. So I apologize if we have not or will not get to your question, but I do promise that if you did leave a question, we can always follow up after. So the last one here is, how do you manage the advocacy program?
That is a very great question, and it is in its infancy state right now. So we hired somebody just this past year who is right now brainstorming and thinking of how we scale advocacy across the organization. As you know, we are in financial services, so we have a few additional regulations that we have to work through. But we are, when we think about the evolution of where we sit today with advocacy, we have somebody that is dedicated to that, and she's already starting to think through ways. And so small ways that she's making an impact is she's actually pulling all of our marketing content into an easily shareable email to crew that are already comfortable in the space, sharing that to those crew, giving them the tips and the best practices on how they can play a part in telling that story. I think another piece for that as well is she's pulling together some LinkedIn trainings, pulling together some social media trainings that we can scale across the organization. But we'll have more answers for you hopefully by mid this year, because she just recently started. She's the newest member on our team, and she's very passionate about this space. So again, feel free to connect with me as we get a little bit further, but it is something that we're very excited about in the future in terms of talent, brand, and recruitment marketing.
Well, to me, it sounds like we have to do another one of these in about 6 months.
Yeah, sounds like a plan.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think I speak for everyone, Shelly. A huge thank you to you. A huge thank you to you, Kevin, and for everyone that joined us today. Like I said, I will be emailing a recording of the webinar when things get done here today. And we will try our best to follow up with any questions that we missed today. So thanks again, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
You.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.